Hi guys, how are you? Just want to talk to you about variations here, and how to analyze them. If you are a QS or a homeowner, how do you analyze variations? Because they can be a shock to the system. So the first thing to do is to get into an analytical framework where you are analyzing them on logic. Before that even happens, the most important thing is you set the game up to win. And when signing a contract, and if you're in Ireland, an RIA contract, you tie the pricing document to the contract. So you price the pricing document, the specifications, and the actual drawings, and you initial every single drawing and get the contractor to do the same, and then all of them are tied in, so you have a system of cross checks, and that's what it's about. So this analysis is on that basis. If you haven't done that, then you're underneath common law, and it is not as exact, and you are open to gamesmanship. So variation is an extra that is a change in work in the description. It's either specified or instructed by the client, the architect, or the engineer. So you need an administrator here. If the client is asking for variations. I once had a situation where I went into a client's house. She was renting another house next door, and we went in for a cup of tea afterwards. And I turned to her, a great woman, turned to her and I said, "Well, how much did you spend today?" She says, "Oh no, I haven't been to the shops." I said, "You probably spent about 1,500. And she says, "What do you mean?" I said, she had no idea that what she was asking for were extras. She had no idea. They were suggestions, they were above and beyond, and she had spent 1,500 in a casual conversation with a builder. And she's very luckily, very decent builder, so that could be addressed, but that's not always the way. So everything needs to be analysed, everything needs to be scrutinised and legitimised. So we got to ask ourselves fundamentally, is it a variation? Is it a formal variation? Is it outstanding? What's the calculation? What's the magnitude? So not every variation is it's not a variation if it's already in the contract. There can be material changes. There can be amount to be agreed. How it's priced is important. It is priced on the basis of what's in the bill of quantities and what you have similar rates for. For like work, if you don't have like work, then you have something similar like it, so you can price it out. And if you don't have, like, somebody recently was trying to 60, 70, 80 euros for chipboard in the attic, and where plywood was 34 euros a square meter, so he was charging double or triple for materials that were going to be cheaper. It just didn't make sense at all. But he was trying it on, and gamesmanship does happen, and you need to be analytical, and you need to know what similar materials to break it down. So here's a couple of examples here. Okay, internal doors, the contractor was trying to suggest that internal doors and frames weren't in it, and went back and we showed them in the variations, in the specifications, yes they were. So that was not valid and was already in the contract and was rejected. Same here, looking for extras for Velux windows and roof lights, and some of this was around low price put in by his quantity surveyor, so he thought he was entitled more, but the reality was he wasn't. And then there was a sun tunnel in the ensuite that wasn't fitted, and this was a credit back to the clients as well. So credits go in both ways. This one here was more interesting. This was for about 3,500, and the area was measured up, the price of standard slabs were agreed, then boards were put in. You can see the price difference, number of sheets, and then there was a credit due to the contractor for the change. But in this status, this was materials only, and then he tried to, this was something like 3,200 he was looking for, so it was $3,000 less. And then he tried to say to me, gas man, very, very nice fella, but he tried to say to me that the fireboards were heavier to put in. So this one here was clear no. He was looking for extra plasterboard and skimming, and it was already included. Very, very, very included, so it wasn't even an issue. This was a change in materials. This was allowed because materials were changed. So once again, you add up the area, you add up the cost difference, and you give the contractor the balance. They may look for profit and tenants to go and get extra materials, which doesn't really make sense because they already had to get the original ones. So metal stud works, this was interesting because the walls were old and they were somewhat in a delicate disposition. The engineer thought it was better to use stud walls, not to tie into them, so into the existing walls. So this was in effect a standalone situation, and the rates had to be agreed because we had prices for stud walls, and then we had prices for metal ones, and tried to tell them it was more, and then you use a bit of leverage. And I said, well, more. I said, that's no problems, but then you didn't put some structural studs in that you should have, and the conversation. This one here was where he was looking for EV chargers, gate feeds, light sensor feeds. All of this was actually in the specifications and on the drawings itself. So you have rejected credits, you've got material changes, you got some. This one here we were looking for more details. So you're going to have a variety of results and engagements. I really think the main thing is to be analytical, to be calm, to be non-judgmental, non-shocked. But it's very hard because neurologically you feel like somebody's coming at you, so you go into fight or flight mode, and that is not analytical. But look, and it happened to me. It happened to me with my own house. The external, the guy measured the whole thing. He didn't take out the opes, went back and forward with him. Then he tried to charge me for the reveals. Then he went back and forward, and then basically you just keep going back and forward with him in that situation, and eventually he yielded, and I made the deal with the guy. So, but that's fine, but it's about protecting your construction budget, but doing it in such a way that you've already set the pitch up for a fair result for all initially. So there we go, guys. Just a couple of thoughts on, it goes deeper, and I can show you some stuff. I will show you a more deeper analytical one where I go and compare drawings from A to B. I'll show you that in a later deeper dive. So really appreciate you spending time. It's the most precious thing we have. It is now 7:10 on Friday the 10th, and I'm going to pack it in for the day. May do a little bit over the weekend, go to a rugby match, whatever. Aha, my doggy's here, so I'm going to pack it in. Okay, talk to you guys. Have a great weekend. Thanks.